Discovered the devastating truth: my entire life was built on a lie, realizing the man I called dad was just a stranger. I'm a 17-year-old guy, the oldest of 4 siblings. My mom is 38 and my dad, well, the man I've always called dad, is 40. My parents got together young. My mom has always been a stay-at-home mom who picked up part-time work, and my dad is a software developer. Since I can remember, I've been treated like the black sheep. Birthdays barely existed for me. Some years I got a cupcake from my mom, but never any presents. I was never allowed to have friends over. Christmas? I never looked forward to it. My siblings would unwrap piles of gifts, new bikes, the latest clothes, phones, games, everything they wanted. My father, aunts, uncles, and grandparents showered them with gifts, and I'd sit there holding socks, pretending not to care. Their birthdays were huge, filled with parties and friends and even more gifts. For me, nothing. I was always left behind when it came to family trips and vacations. Grandparents would watch me, strict about everything I did, but sometimes even they wouldn't want me and would call someone else to get me. When my mom started her part-time job at 13, sometimes she'd invite me out for a treat, just ice cream, but it was something, a rare moment together while my dad and siblings were out. At home, I'd hide in my room and study. It didn't matter how hard I worked, good grades, sports, my dad was indifferent, never showing any hint of pride or even interest. By tutoring and later juggling 2 part-time jobs at a food court and a grocery store, I managed to be away from home as much as possible. But the pressure of school, sports, and constant work wore me down. My mental health suffered, but my mom helped me find a therapist, and that's helped a lot. Yesterday, I got home late from work, exhausted. I just wanted to crash. I opened the door and heard my mom, dad, and aunt arguing in the living room. My aunt was saying I should be more grateful toward my dad. When they noticed me standing in the doorway, they all froze. My mom and dad looked stunned, but my aunt didn't miss a beat and spat, and in comes the bastard. I was floored. She never liked me, hardly acknowledged my existence, but this was new. Anger took over, and I asked her to repeat what she'd said. My dad tried to stop her, but I needed answers. I demanded to know what I was supposed to be thankful for. Was it the years of being ignored, neglected, left out while my siblings were spoiled, while they all played happy family around me? Then, as soon as the word dad left my mouth, my aunt snapped, shouting that I wasn't his son. Everything froze. I turned to my dad, desperate for something, anything, but all he said was, "I'm sorry." My mom just watched in silence. I couldn't take it. I went to my room and just collapsed, crying harder than I ever have. Hours later my mom found me, curled on the floor, shaking and sobbing. She helped me up and stayed with me until I finally fell asleep. This morning I woke up numb. I called in sick, couldn't face the world today. I barely left my room at all. I can't stop thinking that everything I've done, every achievement, every effort to make the man I called dad proud was an absolute waste. I wish I'd known years ago. Update 1. After everything went down, I just couldn't stay in the house anymore. The urge to disappear, to just give up, was overwhelming. I needed to be alone, to try to clear my thoughts, but being alone was also dangerous in that state. Desperate, I called my best friend. He dropped everything and came to get me. We drove around for a while in silence. When I finally started talking, it was like a dam broke. I told him everything that happened the day before, my voice cracking, tears coming harder than I expected. He just listened, his knuckles white on the wheel. He already knew what my father was like, but he hadn't known the full extent of what my so-called extended family did. I've seen my friend mad before, but never like this. At one point he just had to pull the car over. He was shaking, barely able to calm himself. I showed him the post I'd written, and he went quiet for a long time, just staring at the screen. Finally, he reached over, put a hand on my shoulder, and told me that it didn't matter what anyone else said, I was his best friend, period. Then he asked if it would be alright to talk to his parents about letting me stay over at their place for a while. I said yes right away. That sense of relief in that moment was something I hadn't felt in years. After he dropped me back home, we stood by the car for a few minutes, just talking softly in the dark. Before he left, he pulled me into a tight hug and told me, straight up, whenever I felt alone, I had to promise to call him. No matter what time, no matter what. When I went inside, I ignored everybody. I didn't have words or patience left for any of them. I'm determined now. Everything people have said and everything I've realized has helped me start to see things differently. I know now, this man is not my dad. He never was, and I won't pretend he is again. Something has shifted inside me. I have to find out why I'm being treated like this. Why has nobody told me anything after all these years? And, weighing most on my mind, who is my real father? Is he out there somewhere? Does he even know I exist? To make things clearer, I have no idea who anyone on my mother's side is. There's never been any contact with them at all. My 18th birthday is at the end of summer. I've made up my mind, I'm moving out the second I legally can. Maybe sooner, if I get the chance, and if I do leave, it'll be for good. Update 2. A lot has happened in these last few days, and I find myself caught between conflicting emotions, though I'm hopeful that I can begin to heal, at least mentally. Thursday morning, before I left for my shift at the grocery store, Kay, my father, called out to me. Without thinking, I replied using his first name. The confusion on his face was almost comical. I'd always called him Dad before. There was this awkward silence, and when I finally asked, "What?" Snapping a bit, I'll admit, he just brushed it off, said it was nothing, and that was that. I left to catch my bus. When I finally made it home that evening, my mom was waiting and wanted to know why I'd called Kay by his first name. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her outright that he's never treated me as a son, so why should I keep calling him Dad? She had no answer. Instead, she told me Kay had been hurt by it. I wanted to scream after hearing that. Yesterday, I had a session with my therapist, someone who's helped me more than I can express. Later on, my best friend called and offered me a place to stay if I needed it, which meant the world to me. This morning, I woke up to the sound of my mom already in the kitchen, making breakfast. I asked if we could talk privately sometime today, telling her it was important. She agreed. After breakfast, since Kay would be leaving for work. Once he was gone, she got my siblings out of the kitchen, and we sat down. It took everything in me to start. I told her I couldn't get past the years of neglect and how Kay and his side of the family have always treated me. I reminded her that she watched it happen, and I needed to know why. At first, she tried dodging the question, falling back on the usual excuses. But I refused to let it go, telling her this was too important. She kept avoiding it, so I finally told her I couldn't do this anymore, said I'd pack what I could and move out, and we wouldn't be speaking unless she was finally ready to be honest. She started to cry, apologizing over and over, just "I'm so sorry, so sorry." It hurt, seeing my mom like that, but I dug in and asked her again why she let it all happen. When she'd finally calmed down, she told me her story, one I'd never heard before. She was 20, in university, and had been with her boyfriend of 3 years. They lived together with his best friend. One night, after a fight at a club, she wanted to stay out, her boyfriend wanted to go home, they parted ways. She and the friend were both really drunk, and she admitted she cheated with him right there in the club. The next morning, the regret hit her instantly. A few days later, she and the friend confessed to the affair. Her boyfriend broke up with her, and then called her parents to tell them everything. They were furious, told her she wasn't welcome home, cut off her financial support. She lost most of her friends, moved out, and for a while, had nowhere to stay but her car. That's when she realized she was pregnant, and she was completely alone. She went back to the old apartment, but both her ex and his friend had moved out. She tried to contact them, but neither answered any calls or texts. She eventually got a job at a cafe, where she met Kay, a regular there. Kay asked her out, and even after she told him she was pregnant, he didn't care at first. But his parents hated the idea of their son getting involved with a pregnant woman, let alone a cheater. They threatened to cut him off. He nearly broke up with her, but she begged him not to, promising to be the perfect wife and have his kids. They made plans to marry soon after I was born. But the truth is, Kay never showed interest in me, not even after I was born. Mom kept hoping things would change, but they never did. When she finished telling her story, I sat there stunned, struggling to process everything. Eventually I asked her whether she'd ever tried to reach out to my biological father. She said no, but that the timeline made it almost certain her affair partner was my father, though she couldn't be sure. I asked if she'd ever tried reconnecting with her side of the family, her parents, siblings, anyone. She said she tried, especially around the time she was getting married, but none of them wanted to see her. So she gave up. I also asked why Kay seemed hurt by me finally calling him by his first name. She told me something I hadn't known. Kay had been seeing a therapist for the last 2 years because he'd been struggling with depression and guilt. She went on to explain that it started when I was 15. I remember the day perfectly. I came home after a handball game, after winning man of the match, wanting so badly to share the news. She was thrilled for me, but Kay just told me to put the award with the others. I broke down crying in front of him, asking why he hated me, but he said nothing. I locked myself in my room and cried all night. Apparently, that moment stuck with him like a stone, to the point that it never really left, only deepened. It was my mom who finally convinced him to see a therapist. Over time, the therapist managed to get Kay to confront some of these issues. For the past few years, he's been living with this guilt, terrified of facing it head on. When I finally used his first name, he realized he'd lost me. I dreaded asking my next question, but I had to. Had Kay ever abused her? She shook her head and said he'd never laid a hand on her, that he'd only ever loved her. So, that's where things stand now. I'm still trying to process it all, but for the first time in a long while, I feel like some of the weight might finally be lifting. Maybe, just maybe, I can start to heal. The only time he ever questioned her about anything was when she was pregnant with my younger brother and he asked for a paternity test, which she understood. When the test came back positive, he apologized, and he never asked about my other siblings again. But the question that weighed the heaviest on me was why I was left with people who abused me physically, mentally, and emotionally while my parents went on trips and vacations. When I finally asked my mom about this, she was shocked to hear about the physical abuse and wanted to know more. I told her that I hadn't said anything at the time because I was afraid of Kay's family members. I explained everything I could remember, though some memories still haunt me. My grandparents used to scold me loudly and hit me when I was younger. My aunt never spoke to me unless she needed a favor, only to return to ignoring me right after, always telling me to stay in the guest room. When I was 14, my father took the family on a 2-day trip to Croatia and left me behind with his older brother. He asked me to go to the store to buy some things, and, of course, I said yes. But when I came back, he opened the door, took the bags, and then locked me outside the house. I sat outside, crying, until they finished their dinner, and only then did he let me in. As I told my mom all of this, she cried the entire time. She apologized over and over, saying she always knew they didn't like me, but she hadn't realized just how much hate was behind their actions. After our conversation, she asked if I was planning to move out and wanted to know where. I told her I was planning to, but I wouldn't share the location because I didn't want Kay to know where I'd be staying. She started crying again, and it hurt me to see her that way. The conversation lasted for several hours, but these were the main points. Afterward, I went to my room to clear my head and think. About an hour later, someone knocked at my door, and I told them to come in. It was Kay. It was the first time I could remember him ever setting foot in my bedroom. He looked around for a bit, his gaze falling on the shelf where I kept all my awards and trophies from school and sports. He seemed both surprised and sad when he saw my medals from track and field and football. He stopped when he saw the Small Man of the Match award, picked it up, and stared at it for a long moment before beginning to tear up. He put the trophy back and sat down on my bed. Silence hung between us. I asked if Mom had told him what we'd talked about. Still tearing up, he nodded. I asked him if he understood how I saw him, and he nodded again, whispering, yes. I pressed further. Did he understand the extent of what our parents and siblings had put me through? He looked me in the eyes, voice trembling, and asked if it was all true. I said yes, and he just started to cry, full on. After a while, he stood up and hugged me. It was the first time he had ever hugged me, the first time he'd ever allowed himself to cry in front of me. I hugged him back and began to cry myself. He didn't want to let go. He told me how sorry he was for the pain he'd put me through, for the years of neglect, for treating me like an outsider, and he begged me not to move out. When he finally let go, he asked me to give him a chance. I told him maybe, with time, I could forgive him and Mom, but they would have to earn it. But I also said that I would never forgive his family for what they'd done. And for now, he was still Kay to me. He was hurt by it but accepted it. For now, I'm not moving out. But if things ever go back to how they used to be, I will not hesitate to leave, and he knows it. We are going to see a family therapist together. I will try to reach out to my biological father in the future, though I'm still on the fence about my maternal family side. A slight update, I called my friend and told him what happened. His door will always be open for me. We've known each other since we started school, and we both play on the same team. I know his parents well and they're lovely people. I've decided to give my parents this one last chance. I've saved all my money since I started working, so I'm ready if I need to leave. For those who have sent their support, thank you. Here's a virtual hug back. Update 3. Firstly, I want to start by saying just how thankful I am for all the support and concern I've received. Right now, I'm safe, I'm staying at my friend's house, and his family has offered to let me stay with them long term. The messages and stories I've heard from people have really opened my eyes, not just to my own situation, but to the reality of who my mom and Kay really are. I realize now that neither of them love me or care about me in the way I've always hoped they would. Reading stories from others about childhood abuse and neglect, about how they managed to find a way out, gave me a kind of courage I never had before. I kept replaying the times I tried to talk to my mom and Kay about the abuse, about how much it hurt me, how abandoned I felt. Whenever I brought it up, all they ever did was dodge the questions, shower me with empty affection, and promise things would get better. But nothing changed. What really broke something in me was a message I got this morning, a simple question: how did my mom never notice any bruises when they picked me up after their travels and vacations? That hit me so hard. There's no way, if someone truly cared, that they wouldn't notice. That was the last straw. So, this morning I made up my mind. I got up, packed my things. There wasn't much I was taking with me. When I was ready, I called my friend and asked if he could come pick me up and let me know when he was outside. As soon as he rang, I carried my stuff out and sent a message to my mom and Kay letting them know I was leaving. They didn't take it well at all. They started begging me to stay. I told them straight out that I couldn't live there anymore, not when it was so obvious to me that they didn't really care. Kay instantly got defensive, insisting that this was my home and I shouldn't leave. I looked him in the eye and asked why, after 2 years of therapy, he hadn't changed at all. Why, despite everything I tried, was I always treated like an outsider? He just stood there, silent. I turned to my mom and asked her how she could let all of this happen for years and never do anything to stop it. She had nothing to say either. My brothers weren't home, so I went to find my sister to say goodbye. That was probably the hardest part of it all, because she's the only one who's ever treated me with real kindness and love. I talked with her for a bit, and when I told her I was leaving, she looked absolutely heartbroken. Saying goodbye to her hurt more than I'd expected. As soon as I got to my friend's car, I just broke down. We drove around for a while before heading to his place, and his dad helped me get settled into their guest room. Later, my friend told his parents the whole story, and they sat down with me so I could tell them everything. After talking privately, they came back and let me know they'd feel better if I stayed with them long term rather than ever going back. Again, thank you. Truly. For everything. Update 4. Just want to make an update on how I'm doing ever since I left and to clarify things a little. First. Yes, I am dyslexic and I don't care. This is not a book report and I am not getting grades on what I post on Reddit. The grammar police will never find me. Second. This is not my main. My main account is followed by some of my friends and teammates and I don't want them to know what I'm going through. My best friend respects my wishes on not telling others. Now to what has been going on since I left. My best friend and his family have been nothing but wonderful. They have taken me in as their own and showed me nothing but love, kindness and understanding. I appreciate everything they have done to make me feel safe and loved. I have met with my mom and siblings on a few occasions but never at my old home or at my friend's house. I have made myself clear that I will never step a foot inside there again and it took my mom some time to realize that. She stopped asking me to come back after I ignored her for a few weeks. I have switched therapists because I felt like I needed a fresh slate with dealing with all of this and yes indeed therapists are mandatory reporters in my country. I learned that after my first appointment and he contacted the police and reported my old one. Kay and some of his extended family have tried to reach out via texts and some have offered their apologies and others just insults. It's not too hard to think why. Those have been blocked and to those who apologized, Kay's parents, brother and his family, I replied with a simple I accept your apology but I do not forgive you. That may never happen and it will be on my terms. For the foreseeable future do not contact me again. What happens next I do not know. I am just going to focusing on school, my mental health and getting a diver's license. Thank you for everything. I truly appreciate every one of you for everything and big hugs to you all. Update 5. I never thought I'd be writing another update so soon, but something happened yesterday that's turned everything upside down again. I'm still trying to process it all. So I've been living with my friend's family for about 3 weeks now, and things have been going really well. I started seeing the new therapist, got my learner's permit, and honestly felt like I was finally starting to heal. My friend's parents even said they'd help me apply for colleges next year. Yesterday afternoon, I was at work at the grocery store when this woman approached me. She looked to be in her early 40s, well dressed, and she kept staring at me like she was trying to figure something out. Finally, she walked up to my register during a quiet moment and said, "Excuse me, but what's your name?" I told her my first name, and her face went completely white. She asked if my last name was my mom's maiden name, and when I said yes, she just stood there frozen. Then she asked if my mother was mom's name, and I nodded, confused as hell. That's when she started crying right there in the store. She told me she was my mom's younger sister, my aunt. I had no idea my mom even had siblings, let alone that they lived in the same city. She explained that she'd been shopping there for months and kept thinking I looked familiar, but couldn't place it. She said I look exactly like her brother did at my age. My uncle, she kept saying you have his eyes, his smile, everything. During my break, we sat in her car and she told me everything. My mom had 3 siblings, her, an older brother, and a younger brother. When my mom cheated and got pregnant, the family was devastated, but not for the reasons my mom told me. Apparently, my mom had been engaged to someone else at the time, someone their parents really approved of. The cheating wasn't just a mistake, she'd been having the affair for months, but here's the part that made my stomach drop. My aunt said my mom never tried to contact the family after I was born. In fact, she said my mom's parents, my grandparents, had been trying to reach out for years. They'd sent letters, tried calling, even hired someone to find us. They wanted to meet me, to be part of my life. They never stopped trying until they died, my grandmother 3 years ago, my grandfather last year. I felt sick. My mom had told me they rejected her, that they wanted nothing to do with us. But my aunt showed me photos on her phone, pictures of a nursery they'd set up for me, Christmas presents they'd bought every year hoping I'd visit, letters they'd written but never could send because they didn't know where we lived. My aunt gave me her number and begged me to call her. She said my uncle, her brother, not the one who might be my father, has been looking for me for years. She said the whole family has been heartbroken, thinking I wanted nothing to do with them. When I got home, I couldn't eat dinner. I just sat in my room staring at her number. Finally, I called my mom. I didn't even say hello, I just asked her why she lied about her family. There was this long silence, and then she started crying. She admitted she'd been too ashamed to reach out, that she'd convinced herself they hated her, but she'd never told them about me trying to contact them because there was nothing to tell, she never tried. I hung up on her. I felt so angry, so betrayed. All these years, I could have had grandparents who loved me, aunts and uncles who cared. Instead, I was stuck with Kay's family who treated me like garbage while my real family was out there wondering why I never wanted to meet them. This morning I called my aunt back. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow. She's going to bring photos and tell me about my grandparents, about the family I never knew I had. Part of me is excited, but part of me is terrified. What if they're disappointed in me? What if I don't live up to whatever they imagined? My friend's parents have been incredible through all this. They said they'll support whatever I decide to do about meeting my mom's family. But I can't shake this feeling that my mom has been lying about so much more than I ever realized. If she lied about this for 17 years, what else has she been hiding? I don't think I can ever trust her again. Update 6. I met my aunt yesterday and my whole world has been turned upside down again. I thought I was finally getting some answers, but instead I'm more confused than ever. We met at a small cafe downtown. She brought this thick photo album and the second I sat down, she started crying again. She kept touching my face, saying how much I looked like my Uncle Marcus, not the one who might be my father, but her other brother. She showed me pictures of my grandparents and I couldn't stop staring. My grandmother had my exact same nose, and my grandfather had this smile that looked just like mine. There were photos of birthday parties, family gatherings, holidays, all the things I never had. But what broke my heart was seeing all these wrapped presents with my name on them, sitting under Christmas trees year after year. Then she showed me something that made my blood run cold. It was a letter my grandmother had written to me on my 16th birthday. She'd written one every year, hoping someday she could give them to me. In it, she talked about how proud she was of me for doing so well in school. Somehow they'd found out, how she wished she could have been there for my games, how much she loved me even though we'd never met. But here's where it gets really messed up. My aunt told me that about 5 years ago, my mom actually did contact them. Not to reconcile, but to ask for money. She said she was struggling financially and needed help with bills. My Uncle Marcus had wanted to help, but only if they could have some kind of relationship with me. My mom refused and said if they didn't just send money, she'd make sure they never found us. That's when my aunt dropped the bomb. She said my mom had another affair about 2 years after I was born. This time with a married man from her work. The affair lasted almost a year, and when it ended, my mom was devastated. Kay apparently found out and they almost divorced, but my mom begged him to stay. My aunt said that's probably why my mom got pregnant with my first brother so quickly after, to try to save the marriage. I felt sick hearing all this. My mom isn't who I thought she was at all. Then my aunt asked if I wanted to meet my Uncle Marcus. I said yes, and she called him right there. 20 minutes later, this man walked into the cafe and I swear I thought I was looking in a mirror. We have the same height, same build, same way of walking. He just stood there staring at me for the longest time before pulling me into this huge hug. We talked for hours. He told me he's been looking for me since I was little. He's a teacher, married with 2 kids, my cousins who I've never met. He said the whole family has been heartbroken thinking I hated them. But then he told me something that changed everything. He said when my mom was in university, she wasn't just dating one guy. She was actually engaged to someone else, a guy named David, while secretly seeing the guy she cheated with. But there was also a third guy she was involved with around the same time, someone from her study group who she'd been friends with. My uncle said the family knew about all of this, but my mom had told everyone different stories about who the father was. First she said it was her fiancé David, then she said it was the friend from the club, but apparently she also told her roommate it might be the study group guy. I asked him if he knew anything about any of these guys, and he said David still lives here in town. He's married now with kids, but my uncle knows where he works. The study group guy moved away years ago, but the club guy, the one my mom told me was probably my father, apparently he never left town either. My head was spinning. I realized my mom might not even know who my real father is. When I got back to my friend's house last night, I couldn't sleep. This morning I called my mom and confronted her about the money thing and the other affairs. She denied everything at first, but when I told her my aunt had proof, she broke down and admitted it all. She said she was young and stupid and scared, and she made terrible choices. But then she said something that made my heart stop. She said there were actually 4 guys it could have been, not 3. The 4th one was her professor who she'd been having an inappropriate relationship with. 4 guys. 4 possible fathers. And she never told any of them about me. I hung up on her and just sat there shaking. My friend's mom found me and I told her everything. She said we need to talk to a lawyer about getting paternity tests if I want to find out the truth. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to find my real father, but what if none of them want anything to do with me? What if I'm just this reminder of my mom's mistakes? My Uncle Marcus texted me this morning asking if I want to meet my cousins this weekend. I said yes, but I'm terrified. What if they don't like me? What if I don't fit in? And now I can't stop thinking, if my mom lied about this for 17 years, if she's been lying about everything, what else don't I know? What other secrets is she keeping? I feel like I don't know who I am anymore.